morning, ladies and gentlemen. I cannot feel the end. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Your Excellency, Mr. President, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, warm greetings to each and every one of you. Welcome to the Fairway Hotel for the first of its kind, organized by Law Department, stakeholder engagement on the right to freedom of engagement, freedom of association, society organizations in Uganda. My name is Gabriel, and I'll be your MC for the event. And on behalf of the Rule of Law Department of the Uganda Law Society, we extend our appreciation for your presence today. I would like on this special day to take us down memory lane. On the 20th of August, 2021, without any prior notification, the Ugandan authorities announced that they had halted activities of 54 civil society organizations, including human rights and election monitoring organizations. And this was not the first time this had happened. The trend had been continuous. In 2016, security agencies raided offices of HURAF, many of you in the human rights, and they made away with a number of unspecified documents. They made away with computers and office equipment. They battered the security guard on duty. On this day, we gather here as members of civil society organizations, government, and stakeholders in this sector to discuss and evaluate the state of freedom of association for civil society organizations in Uganda. Before we delve into the agenda, I'm going to ask us to have a round of introductions to get to know who is in the room, and then we shall proceed with the item on the agenda. I'm going to request the team in charge of the PA to help me move the microphone around, and I think we'll start from my left-hand side. Thank you.
Okay. Wow. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Samantha Sayun Isementa. I am a human rights advocate. I am also a feminist. I'm very happy to see our president here. Mr. Awundo, you're welcome. And I work with ADO International. ADO in full is the advocates for elimination of discrimination against women. And what ADO International basically does is that it implements CEDAW in Uganda. Most of us know CEDAW, the UN Convention. Yes, I'm very happy to be here, and I look forward to very, very fruitful deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Achim Vogt. I'm the newly arrived country director for Friedrich Ebert Stiftung in Uganda, and happy to learn a lot today.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Geraldine Kabami. I am a member of the Uganda Law Society, working with Friedrich Ebert Stiftung as a program manager. I am happy to be here.
Thank you, Geraldine.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maureen Kiza. I work with the Civil Society in Uganda Support Program, GIZ, as a technical advisor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Greetings from the Uganda People's Defense Forces. I'm Colonel Deo Karikona, the Director of Human Rights in the Uganda People's Defense Forces.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Lieutenant Ben Michael Iranya. I work with Directorate of Human Rights, UPDF. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nasumba Josephine. I'm a member of Uganda Law Society. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning to us all. Nsereko Arthur. I work with the network of public interest lawyers. Mr. President, I'm humbled to be in your presence. You know, this is the time for us to catch those places.
Thank you, Arthur.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ayo Rachel. I am a student of law at Makerere University and the president of the Rule of Law Club, Makerere University. I'm very honored to be here.
Thank you, Rachel.
Good morning. My name is Michael Avoka. I come from Thomas and Mike Advocates, and also I wear the hats of civil society.
Thank you, Michael.
Good morning. My name is Franziska Batz. I'm the head of component for Conducive Environment under the Civil Society in Uganda Support Program, which is co-financed by the German government and the European Union. And thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Nicolas Gons. I'm the head of the Governance and Human Rights section at the European Union delegation in Kampala.
Thank you.
Good morning. I am Katsavi Margaret. I'm part of the media and I'm also a law student at Islamic University in Uganda, Chivuli campus.
Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Leah Nasasira. I work with the Uganda Law Society as the Deputy CEO. I also head the Rule of Law Department. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. Gaudius, you can introduce yourself while you move the microphone.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Gaudius Turiasingura. I work with the Rule of Law Department as the Rule of Law Officer. I'm glad to have everyone present here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Olivia Grace Nakaombe. I work with the Legal Aid Service Providers Network. Happy to be here. And my president, I'm happy to see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia.
Greetings to you all. My name is Lydia Nairoba, Legal Officer, Uganda Women's Network. Mr. President, congratulations and glad to meet you.
Thank you, Lydia.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brian Katsime from Makerere University, Rule of Law Club. Thank you.
Brian.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tinamisha Crispus from Makerere University, Rule of Law Club. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Crispus.
Praise God. Good
Amen.
morning, everyone. My name is Mary Naroga. I am a human rights lawyer and advocate member of the Uganda Law Society and the Programs Officer Pro Bono Office.
Thank you, Mary. And on that point, you can give us a word of prayer. Then the two gentlemen, the president and the CEO, will be speaking to us later on.
Thank you, Gabriel. Let's humble ourselves for a word of prayer. Lord, we thank you for this morning. We thank you for what we are going to discuss. We thank you for all the deliberations that we are going to hear from our speakers. We thank you for the panelists and the discussions. We pray that all goes well in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. I've believed and prayed.
Amen. And now that we have dedicated this session to the Lord and we have gotten to know each other, without further ado, let us start our program by welcoming the CEO, Uganda Law Society, to deliver his opening remarks. Please welcome Mr. Moses Okwalinga.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. Gabriel didn't introduce himself. You did? Okay, thank you. My president, Mr. Bernardo Wundo. Sorry. Mr. Nicholas Kotz. Did I get it right? Konze? Perfect. From the European Union. Francesca, our head of section and component from GIZ, you're welcome. And the EU and the GIZ, thank you for all the support you've extended to the Law Society, not just on this component, but on various other components. Thank you very much. Representatives from FEC, who are our neighbors right at the back at the old secretariat. You're welcome and good to see you, sir. We met your predecessor, but it's good to finally meet the new in office. Colleagues from NetPil, Maureen, our direct contact person, the technical advisor from GIZ, the director of human rights at the UPDF, Mr. Deo, you're welcome, and thank you and the leadership at the UPDF for constantly honoring our invitations and being part of our engagements. The colleague from the UPDF Human Rights Department, you're welcome. Colleagues from civil society, the membership, secretariat, all protocol observed. I would like to thank you all for creating time to be here with us as we discuss very pertinent issues affecting the civic space in this country. We are very honored that the European Union and AZ agreed to partner with the ULS for this intervention. And throughout the process, the Deputy CEO will take you through some of our findings, and would be glad if you openly participated and gave us feedback that will enrich this report. Members, the Law Society has a mandate, which among others includes the fostering of the rule of law and good governance. So being true to our mandate, we are working with all stakeholders to make this possible. And we're glad that you constantly agree to work with us and cooperate with us to make this possible. With those few remarks, allow me welcome our president to make his opening remarks and open the meeting. President, you're welcome.
Good morning to you. Have you taken breakfast? Has ULS organized a function where we've not had breakfast? So let me say good morning to you again. Let me start with the protocol. The head of governance and human rights section, European Union delegation, Mr. Nicholas Goze. The head of strengthening governance and civil society component in Uganda, Ms. Francisca. Good to have you here. The technical advisor on civil space, civil society in Uganda, Ms. Maureen Kiza. The country director, Fred, sorry, I may not pronounce that well, but good to have you here. And welcome to the Pearl of Africa. All government officials and representatives present, all judicial officers and representatives present, all executive directors and civil society organizations present, all presidents and representatives of University of Rule of Law clubs, colleagues in the profession, distinguished guests, all protocol observed. You can see how the protocol is long. So as part of my duties, I serve also as the president of the East Africa Law Society. So the one thing I got about protocol, and to deal with this long list of protocol, usually start and say, I fear you all. So that way, I will have dealt with the protocol. I bring you warm greetings from the Executive Council, management, and membership of the Uganda Law Society. I thank you for honoring our invitation to this event, wherever you are, both physically and virtually, as the case may be. In the words of Vladimir Lenin, freedom of speech and the press must be complete, but then freedom of association must be complete too. I was moved by the simplicity of this quote as I read it, but then the depth of it is a mystery. The Uganda Law Society takes cognizance of the course of events which have prevailed in the country over the last few months. The past few months, the freedom of association has been marked by restrictions on civil society groups in Uganda. And we have mentioned them here. On August 10th, 2021, the National Bureau for Non-Governmental Organizations indefinitely suspended 54 civil society groups. In 2021 also, the government indefinitely suspended the Democratic Governance Facility, a European Union fund for non-governmental groups, saying the government did not have oversight over it. Civil society actors are operating in uncertainty of their future as the deadline for the DGF to wind down its operation in Uganda draws closer. The facility, containing a pool of funds from different international donors, is the main of over 60 NGOs, local governments, and agencies where those operations seek to, among others, promote the rule of law, human rights, good governance, conduct civic education, and provide free legal aid services. It is against this backdrop of the context laid down above that I find today's topic on freedom of association timely and pertinent. In line with its mandate to protect and assist the Republic of Uganda in all matters touching and to assist the government and the courts in all matters affecting legislation and the administration and practice of law in Uganda, the Uganda Law Society has taken an active participation to find out where are we today, what do we have to do next, and how can we collaborate to deal with the current challenges that we have. The right to freedom of association involves the right of individuals to interact and organize among themselves, to collectively express, promote, pursue, and defend common interests. This includes the right to form trade unions and civil society organizations. This right is guaranteed and protected by the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda under Article 21(9)(e) and also protected under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. As part of my mandate and the promise to the membership and the nation at large is that we will use collectively the status of the Uganda Law Society to protect the rule of law. As the Uganda Law Society, we are committed to continuous engagement with our core stakeholders to discuss issues such as this and draw a way forward to ensure that the government in its actions shall remain accountable and remain strictly adhering to the legal and regulatory framework, and that all other stakeholders also remained aligned to the rule of law, which we are all bound by as a society. I am truly honored to be part of this event and to lead a society that is at the forefront of ensuring the strict adherence to the rule of law. I thank you all for taking time to be present at today's meeting. It is my hope that the day's discussion will result in a holistic strategy and pathway towards streamlining the better implementation of freedom of association in Uganda. I would like to thank the Rule of Law Department for their tremendous efforts in putting together this meeting. I therefore would like to take the opportunity to open the discussion and the workshop and to wish you all fruitful deliberations. I will also stay in here for a while to listen to you and listen to what our stakeholders have to say so that we can collectively fight for the rule of law. As I have been saying on the interviews in the past 2 days, rule of law is important to the membership of the Uganda Law Society. Without rule of law, we don't have a practice environment. So it's as simple as that. So it is in our interest to ensure that any threats to the rule of law are correctly responded to in line with the mandate of the Uganda Law Society to address the issues that threaten rule of law. In particular today, I am looking forward to hearing from you on the current state of the right to freedom of association for CSOs in Uganda, and I will be participating in your discussions. I thank you all, and I wish you deliberate, fruitful discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, for opening this discussion. Now let's hear and have remarks from Governance and Human Rights from European Union, Mr. Nicholas Gonza. Please, let's give a round of applause.
The President of the Uganda Law Society, congratulations. The Chief Executive Officer of the Uganda Law Society, representative of the government, of the UPDF, and of civil society, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. It's a great pleasure to be here with you all to discuss this very important topic. For the EU, civil society is an indispensable part of a democratic society. Civil society is a vital space for independent thought to flourish, for ideas and proposals to be discussed, and for new approaches to emerge. A vibrant civil society also ensures that there is a space for all sections of society to be heard, in particular for vulnerable and marginalized groups. Civil society provides a platform for diverse agendas to be advanced in a peaceful and democratic way. But such a vibrant civil society can only emerge if the right to freedom of association is properly protected. The Constitution of Uganda protects this right very clearly and allows for Ugandan citizens to come together and form groups in order to participate peacefully in the public life of the country. These rights are also protected in international human rights instruments such as the Universal Declaration on Human Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Uganda and all EU member states have signed up to these international commitments. All states must balance the need for regulation with the need to respect the autonomy of civil society organizations and the right of individuals to freely associate for legitimate aims. In Uganda, the EU delegation is engaged in an ongoing dialogue with the government on these issues. We recognize the key role played by the NGO Bureau in implementing the 2016 NGO Act. We also take note of the important mandates of several other government bodies, including the Uganda Registration Services Bureau, the Financial Intelligence Authority, the Uganda Revenue Authority, and others, which also have a bearing on the work of CSOs, of civil society organizations in this country. As the EU, we are also aware of the dialogue efforts ongoing between these regulators and the sector, the civil society sector, to try to find areas of common concern and to identify possible areas where requirements can be streamlined and processed, made less cumbersome for civil society organizations. This is particularly relevant for smaller organizations which may have limited capacity to keep up with the complex compliance requirements. While the EU cannot prescribe or even recommend how Uganda should handle its own regulation on civil society organizations, we do encourage an approach that favors proportionality, pragmatism, openness, and dialogue so that administrative breaches, for instance, on delay return to one or another regulator, could be dealt with through negotiation rather than a suspension or a fine. At the same time, we encourage all CSOs to ensure compliance, and where this is becoming difficult, we encourage CSOs to communicate these issues as early as possible to the regulators. We are also aware that regulatory systems in this country are relatively new and still in development. We've heard in particular about the need to operationalize district NGO monitoring committees in all districts. We also took note of the pragmatic approach by the Financial Intelligence Authority, which allowed extra time for NGO to register with it and to provide an online system to access necessary form during COVID. This flexibility is welcome. We also look forward to the digitization of the registration and return filling system at the NGO Bureau, which we understand is also work in progress. But we also cannot ignore that sometimes NGOs in Uganda may appear to be targeted, not for how compliant they are, but for the sector they are focused on. We have seen NGOs working on good governance, human rights, and democracy becoming the target of suspensions, bank account freezes, office raids, and closures. CSO focus on these more sensitive topics make an important contribution to Uganda's development, in the same ways as civil society organizations working on health, agriculture, or education do. And they should receive the same level of support and protection. As the EU, we have a strong focus on this issue through our global policy and through our roadmap for engagement with civil society in Uganda. Objective 2 of that roadmap is to promote supportive government actions and an improved working relationship between CSOs and government. We will also continue to work on these issues through the next phase of the Civil Society in Uganda support program, which is implemented by our colleague from GIZ, which we hope will be signed soon. Let me conclude by thanking the organizers once again for the opportunity to make these few remarks here today, and I look forward to the rest of the discussion. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Gons, for your remarks. And now, to give us a brief of the Right to Freedom of Association for Civil Society Organizations project under the Law Society is the Deputy Chief Executive Director of the ULS and the Head Rule of Law, Mrs. Leah Nasasira Bita. Let's give her a round of applause. As she comes, we're going to have a small alteration to the program and after her presentation, we shall have break tea and then have the panel constituted. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to adopt a protocol as has been rightly said by my president and my CEO. Thank you so much. My name is Leah Nasasira. As earlier stated, I work with the Uganda Law Society as the Deputy CEO, and I also head the Rule of Law Department. And I'm here to give us a brief of why we are here this morning, a brief on the Right to Freedom of Association for Civil Society Organizations project. So this project is being implemented by the Uganda Law Society with support from the GIZ under the Civil Society in Uganda support program, which is also co-funded by the German government and the European Union. Please join with me once again to give them a round of applause for their generous support. And so this project we are working on is a 4-month project, and it's been implemented since June this year, and it ends during this month, at the end of this month of September. And we are implementing it with a number of objectives. One is to assess and evaluate the state of freedom of association for civil society organizations in Uganda. Other objective is to consolidate and build on the existing mechanisms and practices regarding the freedom of association of civil society organizations in Uganda, and to inspire collegial action between the state and civil society organization. Our other objective is to create awareness amongst state actors, CSOs, and all the other stakeholders of the legal frameworks governing CSOs in Uganda. So for purposes of this meeting, while we are working to assess and to evaluate the state of freedom of association for civil society organizations in Uganda, we are looking at documenting the breaches of freedom of association affecting CSO operations and developing publications following the documenting. We would like to share information that will be collected by engaging with the different CSOs, stakeholders that have been victims of circumstances, and also we will consult documented reports and the media for the events that have already passed and the events that were documented and recorded. And we intend to develop publications that will be disseminated to different stakeholders, including, among others, policymakers, legislators, security agencies, among others. And then we are also looking at, like today we have done, we are looking at engaging multi-sectoral stakeholders to discuss the issues concerning the shrinking space of CSOs in Uganda. So we are looking at holding both virtual and physical engagements with a number of stakeholders, including but not limited to security agencies, the judiciary, lawyers, CSOs, and their governing authorities. And we intend to come up with a report containing recommendations and proposals from these engagements. Moving on, by way of background, we are all aware that civil society organizations deliver different services and very vital services to meet the societal needs, and they empower communities through participation in deliberations and decisions pertaining to spheres of life, different spheres of life. And also in the implementation of the SDGs, it calls for sustained effort from both developed and developing member states. And we have also seen that most governments recognize that to achieve the 2030 agenda for sustainable development, we do need collective action to be fostered through diverse participation from various stakeholders, including civil society organizations. More so, the 2030 agenda, as the Universal Action Plan, it seeks to ensure that all human beings can fulfill their potential in dignity, equality, and in a healthy environment where we can all enjoy prosperous, fulfilling lives. We all know that also civil society does not operate in a vacuum. Civil society plays an important role in the government through persistent advocacy, and they also act as watchdogs and hold governments accountable to their communities. Civil society also works as an advisory, and they also intend on concrete implementation measures. They build on their experience, as they usually work with the grassroots people, and they are often working with the marginalized communities. And then civil society also usually implements or supports the implementation of a number of services delivered to communities based on where their objectives or mandate is based. So why would we look into freedom of association? Why would we be meeting here to talk about freedom of association for CSOs? In the recent past, civil society organizations have been vehicles and are still vehicles for creation of positive social change in numerous spaces. Civil society organizations are still key players and have been key players in development, and they assist in the promotion of political participation, development of values of democratic life, fostering civic education in the states and for different communities. And in all circumstances, when the civic space is open, citizens and CSOs are able to organize, to participate, and communicate without any hindrances. And by this, they are able to enjoy and claim their rights and influence the political and social structures around them positively. This can only happen when the state and other stakeholders that are tasked with various responsibilities hold by their responsibilities to protect the citizens and promote the enjoyment of rights to associate freely and for CSOs to execute their mandate. In Uganda, we have over 2,000 civil society organizations. But by way of disclaimer, up until now, there's no accurate record of how many CSOs we do have. But by way of estimation, we are over 2,000, and that is also a gap, given that we cannot put a note to the number of CSOs that we have. So the rights and freedoms, the right to freedom of association of CSOs in Uganda is fairly oppressed, and their existence and survival is currently unsure. So this kind of circumstances are regressive and they are restrictive, and these weaken the capacity of CSOs to freely operate in the country. So our intervention as Uganda Law Society, we are looking forward to improving the operating environment for civil society in organizations in Uganda, and we intend to achieve this through assessing and evaluating the state of freedom of association, consolidating and building on the existing mechanism and practices regarding freedom of association. For purposes of this meeting, I implore you all and I invite you all to open discussion that will feed into our documentation of breaches of freedom of association, so that as the Uganda Law Society, we can make meaningful input into policies and legislation relating to the operation of CSOs. I thank you all, and I appreciate you for choosing to be here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Madam Deputy CEO, for your presentation. Colleagues, we are streaming live on Facebook, Twitter, and we are also on Zoom. And our hashtag is hashtag CSOs Freedom of Association. And we also have another hashtag, hashtag ULS Rule of Law. So let's get tweeting, let's get sharing, and welcome our audience on Zoom. I saw some notable advocates, Mr. Mugumi Asimwe, Mr. Munabi Philip, Pepe Onzima. Thank you for joining us for this discussion today. So as we break off for tea, I'm going to request that we first have a group photo, then we'll have a working tea, and I see all our panelists are here now. So I guess we can take 10 minutes taking a group photo and having a working tea, then we'll continue with the panel. So I don't know, the Rule of Law team, where are we organizing our group photo from? Because our time is really fast spent. Meanwhile, we've also been joined by new people, and I will allow them introduce themselves while we set up for the group photo. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. My name is Bernard Juni. I work with the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development as a Commissioner for Equity and Rights. I am representing the PS here. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernard, for joining us. You've come right on time when we are breaking to the plenary. A lot has been said about about the right and freedom of association. Yes, I see other notable faces that have joined us.
Apologies for coming late. I'm Carol Bunga Idembe from Interreligious Council of Uganda. Glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Yes.
Mayonze Bob, Country Director for Pilgrim Center for Reconciliation, Uganda.
Thank you, Bob, for joining us. Your colleague, yes.
Good morning. My name is Brenda Marunga Atwoki, and I work with the Legal Aid Service Providers Network.
Okay, thank you, Brenda.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Trevor Mathias Segawa, and I'm here representing the Makerere Rule of Law Club.
Okay, thank you. So, colleagues, now is the time that we take our photo. Please, let's move to the front. Let's try to make it a bit snappy because we are running out of time. I think, yeah, because thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, please come. Let's take this photo, capture this moment, and then we'll quickly pick our break tea and have a working tea. stem from the presentation made by the Deputy CEO, Uganda Law Society, on the right to freedom of association of civil society organizations. And from her presentation, we have a panel of 3 people, distinguished persons in civil society and from the Ministry of Gender. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome with me Mr. Michael Aboneka, coordinator of the African Governance Architecture and also a member of the Uganda Law Society. Please let's give him a round of applause as he joins us on the table. That there is Michael Aboneka. Joining him will be Mr. Arthur Nsereko. I hope I pronounced the Arthur rightly. Mr. Arthur Nsereko is the head at the Network of Public Interest Law, or NetPIL, and they do a bit of public interest litigation. Joining the panel, ladies and gentlemen, is also Mr. Bernard Mujuni. He's a commissioner from the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development. Let's give a round of applause as Bernard joins us. Thank you, Bernard, for joining us. And now, handing over this session to the moderator is Mr. Bob Mayonza. Mr. Bob Mayonza is the country director of the Pilgrim Center for Reconciliation, PCR. Not PCR, the COVID thing, but yeah. So, Bob, you'll take it on from here. Okay. Yes, well, dear panelists, we are going to disturb you a little bit because we find you hidden in the corner. Yes, okay, that's much better. And we'll have to move this podium right over here. Okay, thank you, and over to you, Bob.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's such a beautiful day to discuss important issues that will help our nation, Uganda, to move to greatness. As Ali introduced Mr. Mayonza Bob, I'm privileged to serve as the country director for Pilgrim Center for Reconciliation, Uganda. But today, I'm honored to be moderating this panel, and I'm humbled to have Mr. Michael, Mr. Arthur, and Mr. Mujuni. I will try. I think if we have a second microphone, it would be better. Thank you. I think I'm going to start. I'm going to allow each of these precious gentlemen to introduce themselves again in just a minute as we proceed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Once again, good morning to us all. Nsereko Arthur is my name, and I'm privileged to be working with the Network of Public Interest Lawyers. This is an initiative of the Public Interest Law Clinic at the School of Law, Makerere University. And as a network, we operate under 6 different thematic groups, and one of the biggest thematic groups that we have is the Civil and Political Rights Thematic Group, established in 2015. And our niche is public interest, litigation, and lawyering. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Michael Aboneka. I have been in civil society for 13 years. I'm also dabbling as an advocate, a member of ULS, and also a member of NetPIL, Public Interest Litigation Lawyers. I'm also a product of Frederick Ebert Stiftung. So I am happy. And I've also worked with EU on a recently concluded project on the African governance architecture on issues to do with democracy in Uganda and then Africa at large. So the things about civic space, governance, rule of law, they are not at the bottom of my heart, but at the top. Yeah, thank you.
Good morning once again. Bernard Mujuni. Now, these gentlemen have very, very long CVs. I don't know what to say now. I work with the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development as Commissioner for Equity and Rights. I have worked there for over 20 years, so don't start telling my age. I was behind the establishment of the Equal Opportunities Commission, which you all know. The recent project has been the establishment of the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights as our baby, and so many other things. Thank you.
I think we're going to start with Mr. Mujuni. We are here and we are trying to find out so much about the freedom of association of the CSOs. Is because now you're standing in the capacity of the Minister of Gender. So one or another, I'm speaking to someone of government. Is government really interested in having this civic space of social societies in Uganda?
Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator. First of all, I'm a conflicted person, I must admit. As a lawyer and as someone who has championed policies and legislations that have opened up civic space, I'm in a very, very, very precarious situation, to say the least. But just to get back to your question, is that I have witnessed, have been part, the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development is part of the board of the NGO Bureau, and as such, we license and recommend, not license, but we recommend the registration of most of the civil society organizations, almost 90%, they fall within our sector. They either deal with human rights, they either deal with children, women, people with disabilities, minorities, and all those vulnerable groups. So they fall largely within our sector. And that is not a simple role. And before we register, we do due diligence and we recommend appropriately. I don't think there's any NGO which has failed to get a recommendation from them. As I speak, yesterday I was recommending one. And if you had alerted me, I would have come with a recommendation in my hands. And that's a good job. The other aspect is that we support, we are a registrar. Now, civil space or civic space goes to another level for us because we are the registrar for labor unions. And we think this is also another space for workers. And therefore, there is no labor union. Before, there was some bit of moratorium on registration of new labor unions, but we opened it up. And that gives the space for more voice and accountability. But remember also, we license private companies that deal with externalization of labor. Now, I shouldn't attract blows not meant for me there. Do not take me to the hard wall there. But what I'm trying to say is that there is a broader interpretation of civil space when it comes to the role of the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. Even when it comes to issues where there's been some deviation from, the basic expected minimum standards, we are always responsible. So, and our offices are open. I don't think there is any complaint where we have failed to support the registration or even when it comes to fundraising, by the way. And I can mention, civil society organizations, which are partly even people are here, where we have given recommendation when it comes to fundraising. And we have signed MOUs we have signed MOUs with ISA, so many in terms of partnership. When we sign MOUs with you, it enhances your acceptability and traction for development partners. And then you become part of the influencers in terms of policy and legislations. You attend our annual review meetings, retreats, sector strategic planning, thematic group meetings. We have different thematic group meetings. And so I think if I was to get my mark sheet from the audience, I think I am with a distinction. Thank you.
Mr. Michael, we have got a lot of complaints, especially from the government, where more CSOs are groups of identity, but not groups of interests. And we believe this one or another brings a havoc between the CSOs and the government. And you, a person that is good in governance, how do you think CSOs should map around this?
Thank you so much. And some of the things I'm going to say are really practical because I've been there. You see, the freedom to associate also includes freedom not to associate. And in the NGO Act, it is mandatory, a section that makes it mandatory for you to enter an MOU with the district. If you're working in Kampala with the city council, it's a must. Now, if we are talking about freedom of association, and then you're saying that I must, because you see association is about contracts, about consent. So if the law is forcing me to enter into an agreement with the district before I operate, then that to me is a problem. So we have a cocktail of issues. The one, and most cases it's hidden in the laws, in the regulations, in the laws. I've been doing some research. There are about 40 laws in this country where every civil society organization must comply. Now, I'm not sure if we have even reached 20%. I don't even think that NGOs, civil society organizations can even comply to 20%. So the issue, there is the regulatory framework. It's not really conducive. The things about civic space is that if you're not able to associate, you're not able to speak, you're not able to organize, then you can't talk about hybrid civic space. There's nothing like hybrid democracy. The pseudo-democracies or the pseudo-civic space. We have something, but we are working on another one. It has to be plain as that. The other issue is civil society is not just about NGOs. Civil society is large. Common interests. So they have been forcing people to go and do common identity. That go and register. We are battling in court over the ban of NUU. NUU coalition, let us come together and observe elections. And then they say, we think, we dream that this thing looks like an NGO. So we are banning it. And then we say no. So you go to court, and unfortunately the court says, we think also that that thing is an NGO. So what that means, the effect, that every organization, an association, even today we can say, let us form an organization called the 40s. Tulie, tunywe, tufe. Let us drink, eat, and we die. Now, the moment you form that association, the law is saying, and the court is also saying, you must go to NGO Bureau. Now, that's problematic. So you can't work in that environment. Lastly, for me, is the place of civil society. Why do we have NGOs under Ministry of Internal Affairs? Is it a security issue? I suppose they should be under Ministry of Gender and Social Development. Mr. Bernard here should be the one, taking charge of the issues of NGOs. The mere fact that they're even put under Ministry of Internal Affairs, NGOs and all these associations, it presupposes that probably there's a security issue, which shouldn't be the case. So that creates some bit of suspicion, and then you don't have a point of convergence. As long as we see civil society organizations, we see associations as a threat, then we can't have a point of convergence and discuss development for the country.
Mr. Arthur, Mr. Michael deliberation points us to a view that the laws that we have in Uganda, especially governing CSOs and NGOs, are not favoring for the economic development of this country. Is it true or not?
Thank you so much. And I'll tie this in together with Bernard's sharing. If Bernard was the full embodiment of government, I can attest to the fact that yes, government, from Bernard's practice, is more than willing to have civil society in place. However, the willingness or readiness of the state to have civil society associate must be assessed based on the legal framework and the institutional framework that the government has put in place to enable all disabled civil society association. We are all aware of the three-pronged duty to respect, protect, and promote. So the question would be, to what extent does the legal framework and the institutional framework facilitate or enable association? And as the ULS does this study, critical to ask is, when you go and review the provisions of the NGO Act and all the other laws plus the attendant regulations, we need to look at the crafting of those provisions. We have a petition in the Constitutional Court challenging the constitutionality, legality of a number of provisions of the NGO Act. That question has not been dealt with by the Constitutional Court. And yet, and I'm talking of Constitutional Court in terms of institutional framework that the government has put in place to enable or disable the freedom of association for CSOs. That question has not been answered, but the courts, allow me use the word, rush to decide on the fate of New You. While the question of clarity, certainty, and preciseness of provisions of the NGO Act are being challenged in the court. The big question that will always come up is, who decides on whether my business is NGO business or not NGO business? The law allows for entities to operate as companies limited by guarantee. Why should the law and the institutional framework box me into a space that I am not willing to operate in if we are talking of freedom of association? A freedom is a right, and the enjoyment of a right, as Michael put it, is by choice. I can choose to associate or not associate. So from the law and the institutional framework that is in place, we see a country that is forcing us to associate in a particular way. And when we refuse to associate in that particular way, then they will come after us. It's a principle of law. I cannot be subject to your jurisdiction if I have not brought myself under your jurisdiction. So it is my considered opinion that until as an entity I have brought myself under the jurisdiction of the NGO Bureau, for example, the NGO Bureau has no place to suspend my activities. The best it could do is maybe go to court and say this entity is operating and doing ABC, which in our view is business akin to NGO business and should ideally be under our jurisdiction, but has failed to walk the talk.
Thank you so much. Mr. Mujuni, I think the shots are somehow coming now. We want to know from your side, why is it that we have very many regulatory bodies that we have to succumb to, we're supposed to register to, for us to enjoy this specific space?
I was kneeling down secretly, praying that it shouldn't be a we versus they kind of consciousness. But I'm still treading carefully so that we can look at it broadly, and so that the devil is not on the cross. First of all, the fourth estate, as they say, civil society, is a big industry world over. They control, others control the economy, others have led to revolutions, others have, inspired change where there's been lack of space, others have built up, the rule of law, and without sounding like a cop, there are different roles and responsibilities, because you are very much aware that we get a lot of resources through the civil society. And these resources probably, when they come and they are put to particular sectors, maybe in education, maybe in health, maybe in gender, labor and social development, or social development sector, at times we don't track some of these resources when you are accounting for your sector. Yet the investment is being done in that sector. And now the challenge is, do they submit regular reports? Do they share with you what they're doing, how much they're invested where? And you can't also trace it the same. And that creates some bit of hazy situation. I guess that's where the fog starts from, the suspicion starts from. Why do you want to know what I'm doing? But look, I have to account to Ugandans when it comes to parliament that in my sector we invested this much. But why are you looking into? But you are looking into mine. Remember, I'm opening my budgetary, my everything. Before PAC, you are criticizing. You are looking through the budgets of the sector, but you don't want me to look into your eye. Now, there is a scenario between a snake and a wasp when they became friends. And there was that bad time when there was a lot of sunshine and the whole area became a desert, and they went for to the oasis to take some water. But before they had made a contract that they would die together, so they each opened the mouth to look into it, how open and the other was. And the wasp opened, actually it's not a wasp, it's a termite. It opened, and the snake looked into it. It saw some darkness somewhere in between because of the small waist. It couldn't see. It said, but it's okay. Then the snake opened, and the termite looked through because it's a straight. And so they lived together. During that crisis, both were walking towards the oasis, and the snake collapsed, and it was about to die. So what the termite did is they said, "Hey, my friend, you are dead. This could be a very good meal for me." So the termite invited other termites to enjoy the meal because the snake had fallen dead. And before, others brought spears and pangas, and others started making fire, the party had begun. The snake woke up by flicker, and God just helped it to come back to life. He said, "Only to find the best friend whom they had made a contract after opening each other with the panga, about to cut it." He said, "Hey, my friend, instead of helping me towards the oasis, you are the one mobilizing to eat me up." And it remembered that when it saw, it opened the mouth. The termite's wasp mouth had some bit of darkness inside there, and it couldn't see through, but it took it for granted. So, but I don't want to relate that scenario between NGOs and government. But if you feel that it is a near truth, then you can do. So it has those innuendos. I guess that's where the suspicion comes from, about being open in terms of how you expend resources, what you're doing, programming activities. And I think we need to build the trust. the fortunate part of it is that the Minister of Gender has been very open. We get reports from even CBOs from the districts, from CAOs. They submit the reports to us. And, but there is another opportunity which I wanted to say, Mr. Moderator, that the digital economy has opened space. It has unlimited potential. I know we are, as lawyers, you need to open the legal, the part of it, but the digital economy is limitless. It has a lot of power to influence, to own, to blog, and some of them do not necessarily, but there are some governments which are going to, I understand they're going to even to register bloggers, licensed bloggers, you know, tweeters. If you really have a very big following, you should be registered. Now, that's not a threat or something, but I heard about it somewhere. Not necessarily probably in Uganda, but there's something emerging to that effect. You can imagine how far some states can go. I'm praying that Uganda shouldn't go that way.
But Mr. Mujini, why is it that there is that streamlined, proper way of how things are supposed to be done? Excuse me. Before people are tossed, before people are closed, because I was reading an article when the civic societies were closed. Some of the reasons being portrayed or said that some of them were not registered, some of them had no accounts, books of accounts, but you have known them that they have been in existence. But why is it that out of the 2,000 that the Deputy CEO was trying to tell us, you only identified only those? Were there some specific a need or an inch in that?
Now, I think now I'll move towards NGO Bureau now. Yeah? So please, you listen and protect me carefully, because you have pushed me to the NGO Bureau, which is supposed to be here, representing. But I'll extend my sympathy, first of all, to institutions. First of all, most of the victim-led, for lack of a better word, organizations do not have even the capacity to go through the registration process. That's point number one. They are even the institutions, organizations themselves, they are vulnerable as much as the founders are. And therefore, to put a plethora of, procedural, barriers is adding salt to an injury. That's point number two. We also know that there are some institutions which have gained acceptance across by being the voice of the voiceless. The issue of registration, I don't know whether you shouldn't, because to me, I think the most important thing is that you represent a pattern. And Article 50 is very, very clear of the Constitution. You can, as long as you are aggrieved, you can bring any other issue to the table, to the public, and be a champion. You need to be registered as a champion of human rights. You can lead that, even you can go and you can lead an advocacy. And to me, I think we need to exhaust the provisions of the Constitution and see how we can create or guarantee space for the civil society. As lawyers, we need to encourage public interest litigation where government is going away with it anyway. I think that's my final view.
Thank you so much. Mr. Michael, when we look at civic society governance and leadership, one way or another, it leads to either the collapse or the success. But that so much depends on the individuals that are running these civic societies. And I believe in our audience, we have people that lead such organizations. Do you think one way or another, the potential or capability of these individuals lead to the success or the failure of the civic organizations?
Thank you so much, Bob. You see, one of the things that is a big problem also is when you have societies that there is a kind of ping pong Tom and Jerry kind of relationship, then just know that's the design. You'll be busy in Tom and Jerry and you won't deliver. I know for a fact that it is true that even as, as civil society and as organizations, there are issues. There are people who don't want to file returns, but you went and registered and got a certificate. That's just a big problem. So it is true that there are some instances where the organizations or the NGOs do not actually comply. But there's also the issue of what do you do to a bad law? And some of us have been saying comply until we deal with it. Because otherwise you'll be one day, you'll be in contravention. But I just want to say that you see the Constitution under Article 29, there is no requirement for you to register because you want to associate. And that's something people have refused to understand. I, Mike Kaboneka, I'm a human rights defender in my own right. I don't need to create my Kaboneka Foundation to do the things I'm doing. But if I want to get some money to help with the social causes I am doing, someone is going to ask me for a certificate. Those are also barriers. They're going to ask me for a certificate. I'm like, but I'm Mike Kaboneka. Do you like the work I'm doing? So can you give me some money to run the social causes? They're going to say, first go and register, bring a certificate. But I don't want. The civic space is decreasing day by day. So we need to move away from the mainstream. NGO, where is your board? Your accounts? Where is the treasurer? And what have you? Can we support causes? And I think once we move to supporting causes, we shall jump away from the snake and termite story. Because that is what it's created for. The development partners, and those are the conversations, by the way, I'm having privately with some of them. And some have actually supported the causes. So the issue is that we have labor unions. I have the friends in the media. I and a few people are in court to fight for media rights. There is no tribunal at UCC. The media council is not fully constituted. But even the media cannot come and cover the day we are in court. So the issues are many that we shouldn't just look at the things on the surface, the NGOs, the branded cars, but the causes, the labor unions, they're enormous. The other day I was meeting colleagues, the drivers and borders. You can't imagine that you can't register anything that has driver on it. So when you ask URSB, they say order from above. You get what I mean? So there are many underlying issues that we need to deal with that sometimes it is beyond the guys running the organizations. But I was whispering to Arthur that is it possible in this country that the founding member of organization leaves, an organization will still live? That's the biggest question. We keep saying, leadership everywhere. But today, if the CEO of ULS, comes and works with Thomas and Mike Advocates, will ULS still continue? And those are the questions we need to ask. And if ULS will not continue, then the problem is not with the ULS, but it is with the CEO. The same conversations we've been having with civil society organizations. The border associations, the vendors, I meet every ordinary kind of persons and associations. And the problem they are struggling in there is the thing called first register yourselves, then come and talk to us. That's not the point. And once you register yourself, it is as easy as if you have scattered potatoes, it's difficult to steal them in the quickest time possible. But once you ask them to be put in a bag, it is easier to take them in a second. So that's what is happening.
Thank you so much. Mr. Arthur, we here in Uganda, and it's good you head the network of public interest lawyers. I'm going to take two words from your organization. One is network and public. What happens when we have civic society leaders that are so much interested in their interests, but not in the interests of the society that they really initially formed?
Thank you, Bob. I think as civil society, we need to get back to the basics of what civil society is and should mean. For whom do you exist is the question that we always need to ask ourselves. And it is a question that we always grapple with whenever we talk about public interest litigation. Is it an issue for the lawyer, or is it an issue for the public for which the lawyer comes to advocate? The moment we have civil society that pushes their interest and then postulator to be serving the interests of a public, there will always be a disconnect. And it is for this reason as to why probably the public has not come along civil society to fight for that civic space. I'll give you a quick example, a good crude one. When you go to the social media platforms and you dare attack one man of God, or question, or criticize, you will always get a response, and not from 1, 2, or 3 people. Reason being, these men of God have turned the movement, or have described the movement to be a movement for us. I'll use the term, we are the church. And they will come and also remind you, whenever I talk about the church, you are the church. I am not the church. So once I am attacked, or if somebody criticizes me as a man of God, those that appreciate the fact that they are part of this civil society will always rise up in arms. And so it goes back to the question of, have we as civil society actually empowered the communities to appreciate the reason for which we exist, but most importantly, have we considered the community interest in determining what our objectives are, what our activities are, and what our mandate is? And just to add on the question of legal personality, before somebody can get to enjoy the civic space, I said we are a network that operates under a public university. We are an initiative of the Public Interest Law Clinic at the School of Law, Makerere University, that happens to be a public institution. We have failed to convince some of the development partners on having to support some of our activity. The first questions that will come up is, where is your board of directors? And then you'll come up and explain, I am under a university, and under the university structure, we have a university council, we are answerable to the university council, we are then answerable to the school board, etc. So in our minds, as development partners, we can only support civil society that fits within this particular template. The same thing, or the same is being adopted by the regulators. For as long as you do not fit within this template, then you are not complying. And which still takes us back to the question of, can we go back and appreciate the vulnerability of the society that we are talking about? Not everybody in this society can fit within this regulatory template that we have drawn for us to facilitate or enable organizations to associate.
Thank you. Mr. Mujuni, when I was jotting down the remarks by the Deputy CEO, she was speaking about CSOs being as watchdogs, and that brings in so much of accountability. Why is it that it becomes very tough when CSOs come to question and to find accountability regarding the government, regarding agencies? Why is it hard? And the result comes in, you're popping your nose into other people's business.
Thank you so much. Again, I am standing one leg with the NGO Bureau, another leg Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development. So I have to balance. I think from the ministry's, first of all, perspective, from the social sector perspective, we've never had any problem with working with the civil society. One, because we are open. And openness is governance, is about accountability, it's about positive criticism. You very much know that we've got a lot of issues to do with public image, especially to do with externalization of labor. For example, people have used it as political capital, even when it is not. People have just, and even when they are having double standards to benefit from the same, they are the ones who are into labor externalization, then they come around and start shooting you. But we said, yes, if you have a house which you have constructed with glass, why do you start throwing stones at your neighbor? Because they will use the same. And to us, it is about being open, involving civil society in your normal decision-making structures is very key. You find that the ministry invites the civil society to present key policy papers and research brief papers to our senior and top management policies meetings. We involve the civil society in sector working groups, and that cools down the temper. They come to understand the ecosystem of the sector, how the sector works. And I think even I've seen Minister of Education also, Minister of Health invites civil society to participate in their sector reviews. Now, they might invite few and not many, and you'll never fail to find fault. But how you raise fault, even to your own children, matters. You can unnecessarily create tension, even within your own setup at home, if you find fault within your family and you don't have a better way of communicating the same. Rather than rushing to do a press conference where you have disagreed with your wife, why don't you involve a counselor, a relative who can easily talk, and things end up being sorted out? And to me, it's about the approach. What is the approach towards key fundamental issues, whether human rights, whether governance, that you deal with in that? What is the forum? What is the space for you to create the interface? And the moment that one is ironed out, I think then it will leverage on whether you are disturbing someone who is enjoying their chicken on the table, or you have come to share the chicken on the table, or actually you found bones on the table. So to me, it's about the approach on easing tension. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Mujuni. Mr. Michael, we here in Uganda, we have very various groups of people that have their own interests. And sometimes they hide themselves under these civic organizations to present their own issues. And one way or another, they affect the real intention of why this society was formed. You as an expert of governance, what do you think would be the best way of people fronting their agendas vis-a-vis the society agendas?
Thank you very much. I think there's one of the things that has suffered in this country. I think there are two. That they are tired of Uganda, lack of implementation. That phrase is tired of Uganda. And another one, we are standing for the people. So the politician will come and say, I'm standing for the people. And a pastor will come and say, for the people. And then civil society is also coming for the same people. Then the question we ask, but where are the people? Where are the people? Can you show us the people that you either sent you or you're standing for? And to me, as long as that fabric is lost for the people, I am a social justice, bred and grown person. So for me, is that civil society is about common interests for the common good, for the purpose of us all. Now, in Rwanda, you have, is it the Mubano, or not whatever it is that is done every Saturday, every month, yes, where everyone is supposed to do something. Now, that's the idea of where the background of all this comes from. That the ideas you are advancing. For example, when we took on the school fees case, it's parents who were saying we cannot speak because our children are going to be victimized. And then we ran to a few colleagues and it was back and forth wanting us to write, 72-page concept note. We said, no, you'll find us in court. Because you see, the parent is dying. They're asking them for a rug. Yet they have paid school fees. And you want me to first submit you a 75-pager. Let me first file, then we sort there. But then later I realized that they probably just wanted to get money and their own interests. So it is true that we have some black sheep among the white, but it is important that we continue to actually talk about these issues, number one, but also we have a mechanism of identifying. And sometimes I sympathize with the development partners, because even when they need to support you, there must be some accountability. Now, if you are by yourself, there are no accountability mechanisms. You invite the organization, and the only person in the organization is the is the founder who runs everything. Then there's need for alarm. So the moment people deviate from what the issues were in the beginning, because a lot of civil society, the labor union, they all came from the time of the Industrial Revolution. We need something. So there is a cause that is always, underlying. But the problem is that I know of an NGO that closed because they had reached their vision. I look forward to such. He told me my point was to make sure that I have 10,000 people in this community have been educated about HIV and AIDS. They are economically empowered. And he closed the organization. I was very happy. But how many of us, each time you think, once you solve the problem, you're like, we need to think of another problem, So you keep changing the name of the organization or whatever. So the people have become careerists. We need to be in this thing. I am the founding member. 20 years down the road, you don't want to leave. You are everything. Then you lose. So even the development partners, I sympathize with them. They're like, no, what is this happening? But lastly on that, still on the issue of individuals, there are other development partners who are not in this room who would rather give money to organization because there is somebody. Government will say, if Michael doesn't come, we will not want to talk to ULS. You get what I mean? So there is also that individualism, the kind of new sect and cult that has been created everywhere, that it has to be an individual. And yet, we're supposed to support institutions. Because once we support institutions, the cause will be felt, perpetually. So lastly for me is that it is true, we have the black sheep, but they are easy to identify. And the problem is that they have again, and that's one of the things that is actually eating up civil society. Leadership sometimes has fallen. Some of us, we've been labeled rebels. We've started to develop our own leadership of civil society, calling ourselves alternative leaders. We call press conferences when our seniors are not. We take on action when our seniors are not. Because then, once there is a vacuum, people are going to erupt and take over.
Thank you. Mr. Arthur, Mr. Michael brought in something that I was going to ask later on. Why is it that we do not have, when our leaders, the civic leaders, portray a lot of stuff, they do not portray the sense of dialogue, the sense of table talk, the sense of let us talk. But it is so much, let us go on the streets, let us demonstrate, let us, whatever it takes, as long as media sees what we're doing. And I'll go back to echo Michael's words about accountability with our donors, because some of them, that is what they want to see. Why is it that most civic societies do not have that room of dialogue, that room of reconciliation, that room of table talk? But there's so much on the extreme.
At the risk of being branded anti-dialogue, When we talk of freedom of association, we are inevitably talking of freedom of expression. And when we talk of freedom of expression, we are also talking about the freedom to demonstrate. The question is, who determines how I should express myself and how I should express myself? Right now we are grappling with that new bill that has just gone through Parliament. And everybody is saying war unto. And so when Bernard says bloggers and the like, the law is already here. And planted right in the, when you even look at the nomenclature of the law, computer misuse. So, who is it that determines the mode of expression and the mode of association that I should assume when I want to voice my concerns? And this is not to water down the need for dialogue, the need for civic engagement. Not to say that demonstration is not civic engagement. It is another form of civic engagement. But if you're operating in a context of where civic engagement, these round table talks you're talking about, seem not to have yielded, including civic engagement through approach of court. And the reason I'm talking of court is because public interest litigation, where matters have been taken to court, and court approach is civic engagement, but the courts are not responding. We have constitutional petitions that are still lying in court as far as back 2013, and we are talking of issues, human rights. What option do I have left as a human rights defender, as civil society, other than go out there to hold you, the duty bearer, accountable in the full view of the public? So sometimes those that opt out of the dialogue and the table talk have been left with no option. We must appreciate that we are a resilient nation. Ugandans are resilient. Even in their silence, the fact that we can be silent and endure or accommodate whatever is going on, for me that is a high measure of resilience. But there will definitely come a point where that resilience can no longer keep us in silence, hence opting for those other methods. For as long as whatever we have opted for is within the law, I wouldn't hold you to the law for having opted for a public show and not for a roundtable talk.
The time given to me is done. I don't know if we to extend or we say 10:50. All right. All right. Thank you. I just wanted to keep that. Mr. Mujuni, how do you think, with all that we have been saying here, is there a way that we, as one of the recommendations being fronted by Uganda Law Society, where we have empowering of communities, whereby we are ensuring that we get to the 2030 collective actions that are supposed to be done? And a disclaimer, we don't have any lady on the panel just because the ladies, they did not turn up. We didn't just say that they're only men, but the ladies just didn't turn up. So what do you think we should do collectively to have this specific space enlarged for the civic societies to enjoy?
Thank you so much for the very, very interesting and teasing questions that you have shared with the panel. First of all, I had already raised my issue that this table was gender blind, but behind the curtains, I was assured that it was not by design. And it would be very unfair for someone from Ministry of Gender not to raise the same on this table. So, the other aspect is that that I think we need meaningful engagement. We need meaningful engagement between the civil society, the civil space is a negotiated thing. If you don't negotiate it, they take it away. Everyone is jealous of it. Everyone wants to control it. And that's what the piece of the pie that we are also demanding. So, and I think for us to have a clear bargain, we don't have to let some of the things pass without shouting. I love the civil society by the times of the Miriam Matembes, by then NGOs were vibrant. They were really issue-based. Is it ACFORD? Even by then, Urinet, the networks were really, coalitions were really, they would come together and coalesce and impact on the government policy. They come together, but now they are divided. They need to come together, form networks, coalesce, and synergize and target legislations that are taking away the space. Like if this legislation is coming up, what are we saying? What are we doing? It is coming up, first reading, second reading, no petition to the speaker, no nothing. I know that the public space now is already congested. You go out demonstrating, the first thing is not the issue you are bringing to the table, but chiboko, something like that. Oh, apprehension. But we have a lot of space. I've seen people communicating to the speaker on non-issues, issues of character assassination, of attack, not issues that, I've seen people attacking people in responsible offices on personality issues, and they reach out for them, either on Twitter, on, any social media space. How come we don't bring these issues that impact on our operations to the same people? And this happens even when we chat. I'm a poet. I write poetry and I share with so many groups. And when you share poetry, which is the work of your original creation, really content, you might get one person say, wow, but attach something, and you know what I'm talking about. You attach something silly, or you send something silly, you'll get 100 people commenting on it. And you're like, okay, did this make any sense? Or what values are we cherishing? What space are we occupying in our mind, in our usual public space that we want to, in the area of policy impact and change?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Michael, we can't sit and we leave out an issue, especially that is mostly being raised in Uganda, the young people. Everyone is talking about the young people. But one thing I know is that we have a generation that has somehow destroyed or engulfed and taken over the space where the young people can fully and meaningfully table issues without any interests, without having any bias. What do you think, as the young people, and I believe we have very many leaders here and EDs that work with young people, how can they encourage and how can they empower the young people to enjoy the space?
Thank you very much. The thing about the young people is that it has been bastardized. It's just like, everyone is, fighting for the rights of the women. Of course, this is not to offend. My colleague is there. And so my grandmother asked me, is there a special road for the women? What color is it? Is there a special medicine for the women? What color is it? She wanted to understand these people who are advocating for my rights as a woman, what is it that is there for me? It's the same for the young people. Where, we have been involved in all these processes, the Youth Manifesto, but there has to be a deliberate effort to actually mentor these people I've been speaking to the political parties and said, I've not seen any mentorship program. I was honored to have attended almost a full year mentorship leadership program by Frederick Ebert Stifton. It was the only one. And I want to thank you. I hope that the fruits. So only so, because then the question is, if you're not deliberate about mentorship, we can't be young people, we can't always be used for elections, for beating up others. And Afande is here. We always discuss about UPDF and the rest. And I remember sometime we said, okay, I love the uniform, maybe I'll wear it one day. No, and those are the conversations we have. And say, but why is it that it's young people? Of course, definitely there's a demographics that we are, the majority, but there is no deliberate effort to actually mentor. There are two things that actually are important: succession planning and scenario building, which is never done, even probably at the country level, even at the office, wherever you are. So then the young people are left to fend for themselves. And I can assure you, they are like water. They will look for the smallest crack and they will penetrate. So once they are not deliberate efforts to engage the young people, look at the parish development model, look at all the Myoga and all these programs. Who are the guys receiving the money? Okay? So until we are deliberate about the young people, their space, and I can assure you that the young people are willing. I have been to every kind and every levels of young people in engagement, in the rural, in the urban, at the global level, in the region. We now have a network for young activists across Africa. Again, the alumni of FES, we said, no, we can't just sit here. So let us do a network across Africa. And we're trying to have everyone, labor unionists, border riders, and we interact with all these people. So the point is that there must be a deliberate effort by civil society itself. Check the media houses. What is the deliberate effort to ensure young people, before just interviewing them for the Vox Pop, but what is the engagement? NetPil here has the mentorship program to which I participate, and the fruits are actually seen. So once there is no deliberate effort by every stakeholder, including government itself, okay, so all these academies and the patriotism clubs they were talking about, I don't know what happened to them. And the fact that once education is important, the things to do with education and health, I still strongly believe that we should take them away from the private and government should reclaim them. Because once you have people who are able to go to school and they're not forced to buy milk even when they don't drink it, and that they can be able to afford medical bills, you have a healthy nation that is also wealth in terms of the knowledge, and then that way you can have a population. But as long as people are hungry, they will be angry, and they will be like a devil. The devil is always there looking for an opportunity. So any opportunity that comes up, they will go to the streets, they will do everything, because they are there. The young people are tired of being used, and they are tired of being participated. I for one, I believe that we don't need a special interest representation in parliament. You have a workers MP who is also representing the MPs in the house as workers. You have the youth MPs who I don't know by name. I have never voted for them. So it doesn't make sense. So we are just thinking about ourselves. The parliament recently just passed the pensions amendment to allow the speaker and deputy, they have benefits for their children for 20 years after they have gone. And those are the things that are happening in this country. Everyone is in their office. They are trying to bring to themselves. But all hope is not lost. The young people are there. We know where they are. And maybe to some it's a project to make them poor so that they can beg a lot and therefore cannot stand on their own. But we need to do three things: economic empowerment, but the knowledge, and also their capacity. Who is mentoring them? I have the privilege that in civil society I have people who have mentored me. There are people mentoring me in the legal profession. So, and also it has to be deliberate. So once there is no mentorship at all levels, even in the house, it will all collapse. Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Arthur, as we conclude, one of the recommendations the Deputy CEO was speaking was there is the space is almost fading away. And I'm going to ask you a question of how do you think the public can get back interested in these civic society organizations? Because if the public is not interested, I think that's the reason why even they do not comment. They are like, whoever does something, it is for their own good, but not for ours. Well, how can we bring still back hope to the public?
Thank you, Bob. Reality check. The civic space world over will continue to shrink and continues to shrink. There is no establishment that would desire to maintain its hold on to power that will allow us a free field to play. So it will continue to shrink. And for us as civil society, that is opportunity. The more it shrinks, the more opportunity for us to do what? To engage. Just imagine when you wake up one day and you have the entire road for you to march as freely as you want. Then probably there would be no cause for marching onto the street. So one fact for sure is this civic space will continue shrinking. Even with the multiple engagements we have as civil society, amongst ourselves, and with the powers that be. So what do we do? And the first recommendation I have is for the regulator. And I want to draw it from the principle of presumption of innocence and natural justice. Under natural justice, we say man is naturally good and man is well intentioned. So as we come to regulate civil society, we need to have that presumption in favor of lawful formation, lawful objectives, lawful intentions, lawful activities, as opposed to unlawful, unlawful, unlawful. So civil society needs to build, as we build capacities for people in terms of human rights awareness, we also need to focus on building capacities of these communities to join the civic space and utilize that civic space by themselves. I am involved in a project with one of our partners where, upon building capacity of a given community, you need to show that that capacity has been put to use. So if it is an issue of approaching police, for example, it is not my duty as network of public interest lawyers to go and engage police on behalf of this community. It is the community, it is the duty of the other empowered community to go and engage. If it is approaching court, it is not me, Nsereko Arthur versus Attorney General. No, it should be the evictees of Mubende versus Attorney General, and simply supported by Nsereko Arthur or network of public interest lawyers. So, if we are going to protect this civic space as it continues to shrink, we need to empower our communities to take hold of this civic space so that we can get to a point where when press conferences are held, it is not Michael Aboneka addressing the press conference. It is the community addressing the media on issues that touch the community. Let us take the solution to the community and allow the community to run with the solution as opposed to executing the solution on behalf of the communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to invite my colleague because I think we're getting feedback from the participants, right?
Yes, thank you, Bob. And a round of applause for the panel and to Bob, the moderator. These guys have done quite an amazing job for the last 1 hour that they've been engaging. And you know, we are talking freedom of association, and quite a lot has been said by the panelists. And the one thing I can't forget is I get to learn something new, that Bernard is a poet. So I look forward to listening to one of your poems about the freedom of association. Now, online we have a number of participants, but one of the participants that really strikes me from my online audience is our colleague, Counsel Nicholas Opio, who has faced the long arm of the law, and he has really been head on. You know, he's suffered all sorts of violence by the state in line with freedom of association. So I don't know if Nicholas, you can hear us. I know it's about 1 or 2 a.m. where you are. Hello, Nicholas. So I think
I can hear you.
Oh, hi, Nicholas. Unfortunately, we can't see your face. It's been quite a long time.
It is in the middle of the night, so I wanted to spare you the sight of me in the night. You have to do with my voice. My sincere apologies.
I understand. But good to hear from you, though. We're discussing freedom of association, and I know you've been keenly following. And, you know, just getting from you, your experience with the ban that government and the state authorities issued, and also your comments on the discussions that have been going on.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Again, my sincere apologies. I cannot stand on my video for fear of scandalizing all of you in the room. It is, I've been up since 2 a.m. in the morning just to be able to catch up with this discussion. So please pardon me. Secondly, let me thank the Law Society for coming to this debate at this particular time. I hope that this is the beginning of a renewal process for the Law Society to be the principal defender of freedoms in Uganda, because there's no other place that people look up to than to the Uganda Law Society for guidance. So thank you very much for convening this discussion. I think that we must begin by framing the issue, because if we don't frame it well, we will not get, get to the bottom of the solutions to address the problem. It is like a disease. If it is misdiagnosed, you can give it a wrong medication. So let's frame the issues first. In my view, 3 things are important to note. First is that there is absolutely no denying the fact that civic space in Uganda is not just closing, it is almost closed. This closure of civic space expresses itself in various forms and shapes that we cannot go into now for fear of time, but just to say that for those of us who have been involved in this space, it just feels like a noose over your neck, and that noose is being tightened every single day. Secondly, there is a red herring of legislations and institutions being put in place, purportedly really for regulation. But in fact, it is not for regulation. It is for control. It is for stifling. One would think that legislation and institutions would help to facilitate, to promote, to make sure the conditions, the space is conducive. But in practice, these legislations and institutions are not intended to promote. Rather, it is an attempt at co-option, an attempt at intimidation, and an attempt at a monolithic debate about the governance of our country. Again, there are many ways in which we can expound and explain those. So laws that are being passed, institutions like the NGO Bureau, are really just instruments, not to facilitate, but rather to inhibit, to co-opt and choke, the expansion of civic space in the country. And then you can see that in the way that they have conducted themselves, in the way that the laws are being applied, in the way that the courts have responded to this. The third, and I think for me even more concerning, is what I see as despondence. People are despondent. People are, almost giving up on fighting back, because, you would think that courts would be the place to go. Many people are losing hope in that process. And so there's just a wide, civil society has been remade, if I may use the word, by the state in ways that it is now a shadow of itself and what it used to be 10, 15 years ago. And so I think for me, that is the diagnosis. That is for me the framing in which this discussion has to be held. Now, in terms of just our experience in dealing with the Bureau, and I have to be very frank here, that the organization I founded and lead was among those suspended by the Bureau, ostensibly for failure to file returns, even when there's proof that those returns were filed and we were able to provide that proof. We had to go through a court process to challenge the actions of the Bureau, and the court found that the actions were high-handed, irregular, and without legal basis. The second disclosure is that we have a petition in court where I saw an affidavit to challenge the provisions of the NGO Act for being unconstitutional. That case has now been submitted to the judges. We're waiting for a time for oral submissions and then judgment. And so it's important to make that disclosure. That case is making its way in the court system. But that experience has taught us a couple of things. First is that, and as I think Michael mentioned, the outlook of the state towards the nonprofit sector, or in fact, towards civil society as a whole, is that of a security threat. The NGO Bureau is under the firm control of 4 individuals who are called liaison officers. The other formal structures are just windbags. I don't know if you know a windbag. If you're going into a car sale, there's this plastic thing that is pumped and shaking its hand and head. The actual people who really run the show, 4 individuals coming from 4 leading intelligence agencies, titled liaison officers. They take instructions from that group. So there's no attempt to think of civil society as a development partner, as a space for innovation, as an expression of the inherent freedom to association and expression, viewed as a security threat, and therefore, and that's why if you go to districts, you find the roles of RDCs, ESOs, and DSOs more pronounced in the way that they look at civil society. And so, and then, unless you understand that from that what I call the deep state, the shadowy state that doesn't want to be seen, but that is actually in control, then you understand the motivation for the things that are being done. The second thing is that there's just no pretense about it. People don't care about due process. People don't care about being factual. It is simply an attempt to inconvenience, to divert and preoccupy you. Essentially, if an NGO is to be in compliance with all the 40 or so laws, they would do nothing the entire year but be involved in discussions and compliance with these laws. So you can see the impact of these laws and how debilitating they are to the operations of the sector. And so unless we disentangle, we begin to have a system that seeks to facilitate, not control or co-opt civil society, you're going to continue having problems. The third thing about our experience is that it's important to fight back. Many people involved in the sector, and will recall in 2004 when the Anti-Money Laundering Act was passed. A few of us foresaw just how dangerous the law was. We convened discussions around the law. Nobody turned up and said, "Oh no, it's a very good law." We are now beginning to see the impact of that law. In fact, there was just a decision a couple of days ago in the case of the Uganda Women's Network and the National NGO Forum, a case in which we took part, challenging the decision of the Financial Intelligence Authority to suspend, freeze, and close the accounts of these organizations during the elections. The court found that those actions were unreasonable, high-handed, and without legal basis. You also remember the passing of the NGO Act. When the NGO Act was passed, you may not recall, surprisingly, surprise, it was the NGO Forum that led the campaign to urge President Museveni to assent to the law and said the law was an excellent law, despite our warning that there are pitfalls. So we really got to begin to appreciate that this sort of legislations give an appearance for due process, but there's just no due process whatsoever. The ED of the National NGO Bureau can suspend you with the power of his pen without, a hearing, without due process. And many organizations, and so unless we challenge these legislations and overturn them and be able to make these institutions realize that they are being instrumentalized to defeat as opposed to promote. The third and last thing really is to say this, that a large part of this problem has to do with government's fear, perhaps paranoia, let me say that way, of what they see as foreign funding in Uganda, the fear for, some money is being used for subversive activities. I call it a paranoia because in all the cases where there have been accusations of this, it's just been proven to be false, factually. Look at the case of DGF, a complete moronic action by paranoid internal, people in the security sector. And so the fear of foreign funding, unfounded as it is, resides very firmly in the minds of people who run the state, and they think that there's some. But the truth of the matter is, if you look at it this way, that's just the way global capital moves. And it's not just civil society that is getting financing from outside the country. Everybody is, including the state. If you look to businesses, you look to, all, banks, look to all aspects of our society. The nature of commercial transactions now is that there's movement of capital from the global north to the global south. It has nothing to do with being nefarious. It has nothing to do with a hidden motive to, do something to overthrow government. Absolutely nothing. It's just a misdiagnosis by those in the state, and I call it a mere paranoia by a far less intelligence network in the country. If they were competent, they would really see this differently. And just to conclude, My learned friend from the Ministry of Gender talks about the analogy of the snake and the scorpion, or whatever termite he described it. Really, it's a pregnant analogy, and betrays the mindset of those in the state, people like him. But think about it this way. There is nothing being done in the cover of darkness. There are banking regulations where finances of organizations come through bank accounts. In fact, donors are more stringent in the way that you account for their funds. And so this idea that we have got to see, we have got to monitor, we have got to, you already have enough eyes, and these things are being done every day in the open. And this idea that there's something in our abdomen hidden, a dark spot, is really not born out of evidence. And we've got to disabuse people of that sort of notion because there's just absolutely no factual basis for it. And that's why none of the organizations that are being accused of the things they're being accused have been proven to be right. Those accusations have all been proven to be false. I don't know of any organization really. And so, we've got to push back against these practices through all manners of ways, including, in fact, not choosing to be forced into regulation, because regulation is like being tethered, like a goat being tethered. You can only eat the grass in a particular circumference. But there's an inherent freedom to associate for lawful purposes. If what you are doing is lawful, I think that we've got to begin to try and test the limit of the law in completely disregarding this sort of attempts to co-opt. I will end my diatribe here. Thank you very much for the opportunity, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you to the Law Society.
Thank you so much, Nicholas, for tickling our minds a little bit, and for those very insightful comments. And thank you for staying up late into the night just to follow. I know you must be tired now.
Are they insightful or incisive? Because inciting might be different from.
Well, I stand correct. Incisive. Thank you, Nico. Yeah. So we're still talking to colleagues online, and I see past President Gimara online. I don't know, Mr. President, if you're able to hear me, and probably if you have any comments from the current speaker. Is Mr. Gimara still on? Okay, I think there's a challenge there. I see Pepe Onzima is also online. Pepe, do you have any comments from the discussion? All right, I see Isaac, Council Isaac Semakade's hand.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, Isaac, loud and clear. Good to hear from you.
Well, I would like to thank the bar for this meeting and the development partners. I just want to amplify what we mean by fighting back against the concept of using regulation and state power to shrink the civic space. I noticed that we probably being lawyers are focusing so much on fighting back against the law themselves, which in itself is there was interference there. But I would like to suggest that with the support of the development partners and the strength of our numbers, we need to fight back against the ways and means that the government people, I guess, do harm to us in the civic space, and they do so through repression, surveillance, and militarism. Things we have almost taken for granted now. We have never really touched into, say, how the security agencies work, how the intelligence agencies work. There's very little accountability. I think in all 12 years of my practice, I haven't seen a deliberate intention to hold ESO, SO, CMI actors accountable. In the latest decision by Justice Gidudu, for instance, where we see him happy to impose a financial burden on all citizens of Uganda for egregious acts of torture by named individuals. So we see Justice Gidudu failing to appreciate that the Constitution requires individual accountability by state actors. He issued damages which are low, almost the same damages people get for defamation. He failed to condemn the agencies involved in his final orders. He didn't insist that action should be taken against named perpetrators. There's no order issued to any particular authority or agency to take disciplinary and other administrative measures against the named perpetrators. And this sort of undermines the Constitution. So I would like to suggest that it's good to challenge the laws and everything, but it's also good to bring impactful consequences against individual perpetrators and against the tactics and strategies that they use to push back, in our strategy to push back. That's really all I wanted to say, because if we create a culture that makes this conduct acceptable, they will just simply continue and they will make more laws. If we challenge one law, they'll bring another. I think that's all I will say for now.
Okay, thank you so much, Isaac, for your comments. Those are well taken in. From the online audience, do we have any other suggestion before we come back to the people in the room? Correct? Do we? Okay. So, colleagues, you've had the discussion, and we're still talking about freedom of association. And there's been one sector that has come under criticism, and this is to do with security and intelligence forces, which is going to push me to from Kano Dale. You've heard what they're saying about security forces, and it seems the security forces are playing a very big role in suppressing the freedom of association in this country. The men in uniform are the men who are breaking into offices, battering people, going away with equipment and documents that belong to these CSOs, and it doesn't stop them. Now there are liaison officers, like Nicholas said, who are sitting at internal affairs and the NGO board and they're making decisions. And these decisions are hampering. I don't know if you have any feedback for us. Gaudias, sir, may I request you to do the needful with the microphone. Your holiday is over. So
Thank you so much, colleagues. Once again, I'm Kano Deo Karikona, the Director of Human Rights. As the Uganda People's Defense Forces, Uganda People's Defense Forces, we recognize and appreciate the role played by civil society organizations. They play a complementary role, and there's nothing to hide about it. We appreciate the role played by civil society organizations. What is our role as the Uganda People's Defense Forces? It is creating an enabling environment where you'll be able to exercise all these rights, not only the civil society organizations, but free space for everyone. And for us, we are happy. Allow me to quote the president of the Uganda Law Society. Before he left, he whispered to me and said, "Thank you so much, the Uganda People's Defense Forces. I know you are doing your best." And indeed, that's what we are doing. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no society which is not regulated. I'm not sure even in heaven where we have pure people, there are no regulations there. I know even heaven is regulated. And it is a duty really incumbent on us to conform to the regulatory frameworks which are in place. Now for us, we'll create for you the environment, the enabling environment. Is there, our question first, before we get into yours, our question as UPDF was, before we get up, talk about the shrinking, is the space there? That is number one. And for us, we are saying yes. We have 2,000 civil society organizations. Somebody even mentioned here that others are not even registered, so they couldn't even be more than 2,000. And we are aware there is a requirement that they should be regulated, that they should register. So for us, civic space exists. Now, whether or not it is shrinking, that is another discussion. There are avenues. You have talked about the NGO Act, some of the provisions being restrictive. So do we have an avenue where you can go and challenge those provisions? The answer is yes. You have the judiciary. Whether or not it is doing it to your speed, that is another thing. That is an enabling environment for us, and we take pride in that. So those cases will be determined. They are in court, and we shall abide by the decisions of the courts. We don't have anything to do with that. Ladies and gentlemen, you know the Uganda People's Defense Forces is an accountable force. It is a people's force. And respect for human rights is not only a requirement of the law, but it is part of our doctrine, it is part of our ideology, and it is part of our philosophy. So we are an accountable force. Where we have errant officers being in conflict with the law, you know we do it openly, we punish. There are so many officers who have been in conflict with the law, and we have punished them, and we are an accountable institution because of the roles we play and because of our history. I want to make one honest recommendation. As we engage with government, ladies and gentlemen, we need to have a honest engagement with government. We must be honest in whatever we do. Somebody has mentioned black sheep hiding in civil society organizations. It's a statement which was made here. Now, black sheep hiding in civil society organizations for their own interests, yes, maybe that's when you create problems with the security, because now national security is a very big thing, and we must be there to protect you. So let's have a honest engagement with government. Two, maybe sometimes it is the language that we use. Some languages are confrontational. So how you fight for your causes also matters. And I also want to comment about one thing. There is online activism. It is also association of its kind. And yes, they enjoy it. But as we talk about the shrinking civil space, let us also talk about the shrinking morality of some individuals. We have a society now that believes in lawlessness. We have a society that is fighting with law enforcement agencies. And what is our role? To ensure an enabling environment. So we really need, as a society, to be honest in whatever we do. We need to be responsible in some of the statements we make. You have seen online engagements where we have people promoting sectarianism. We have seen people making statements which are prejudicial to the security of this nation. So even as we do it, we must remain responsible. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, I saw a hand up. Yes, we'll have the lady. I hope we're taking notes of some of these.
Yes, thank you very much. As I earlier introduced myself, my name is Samantha. I would like to appreciate the panelists. Thank you for your views and your opinions. Now, I have maybe two concerns. We have a certain growing intolerance towards peaceful assemblies in our country lately. And we know that it has been a long-standing practice in Uganda for civil society organizations to use public spaces generally to demonstrate peacefully, okay? Maybe demonstrating against government actions or even advocating for change when authorities have failed to heed to the voices and witnesses of citizens. For example, recently we've seen women representing different CSOs being arrested as they assembled to hand over a petition to the Speaker of Parliament. So I feel these are very critical issues that we should not just ignore. And then security personnel talked about the restrictive legislature that impedes the fundamental freedoms, such as the very right that we're talking about, freedom of association. For example, I would like to take you to the NGO Act. When you look at the NGO Act currently, it requires CSOs to seek approval from the district NGO monitoring committees, the local government, the NGO bureau, before extending certain activities to a new geographical area. Personally, when you ask me, I find this very I find this particular section in the law very broad, and it leaves considerable scope or considerable room for selective and politicized interpretation by state officials. I know our very own security personnel talked about judiciary, that you can challenge these sections of the law through the judiciary, but we know what happens. We are lawyers. We know the current challenges with our judicial system. So can we bring up recommendations that are in line with the needs of our citizens at the moment? Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. You had your hand up. Okay. Yes, we're still getting your comments from the discussions, or you want me to pick you out? Okay. Yes, see you.
Thank you very much, our panel, and the colleagues who have contributed. Well, still discussing civic space. There has been, did I say cocktail? I need to borrow someone's word. Someone said a cocktail of legislations that were recently passed. I think they're about 10 or 15. And well, the Law Society was invited to give views on some of them, and some of them were quietly passed. But what is significant, and what I need to put emphasis on, is the Computer Misuse Act. As the Law Society, we've been in court for the last, I think, 3-4 years. We have a constitutional petition challenging provisions, I think, 24 and 25, and I think 26 of the Computer Misuse Act. Well, the intentions of the law are usually good and noble, but it all comes down to implementation. Now, it's not just one. Actually, the petitions were consolidated. When the panel was reconstituted, the petitions were consolidated with other petitions challenging the law. But government still went ahead and amended and created a new law, and yet there is an ongoing constitutional petition challenging provisions of the very law. But what is very apparent in that law is, for us who are always speaking, civil society, the Law Society and other players, we come out to point out, advise. So the problem with the law is that the definition of what is offensive, what is obscene, is not defined. So we leave it largely to enforcement to define what is appropriate, what is obscene, and what is offensive. Now, the risk with that is you're at the mercy of someone. He will define what is obscene today different from what is obscene tomorrow. And you can't have legislation that is uncertain. So for us as members of the civil society, we need to take more interest, and it's also in the interest of government, so that we know that, well, this is the standard. Now, when the standard is not clear, everyone sets their own standard. So I encourage all stakeholders to work towards finding ways, and it's unfortunate. This is at a time when we should have defined and made clarity in the law. But it's unfortunate that we lost that opportunity, but we shall continue engaging government. Thank you.
Thank you so much, CEO. Yes, Mary, your hand is up.
For me, my name is Mary. Just looking at the issue of the right of freedom of association, that word right, personally, I see it no longer in existence, because the space for the civic space is not actually shrinking. Somebody mentioned it has shrunk, because if governance facility that is supporting over 60 CSOs is closed and there is no defense that, for me, there is no civic space at all in Uganda. Just like what Aboneka is saying, is it's like Tom and Jerry, this one is doing this one is doing that. When I look at issues of peaceful assembly, recently there was a case where some girls, young people, were advocating for the rights of people, killing of people who are working in, is it abroad, and being killed. But the way they were bundled up by the state, by the army, it was so bad, including the girls. So that space is not there anymore. I don't know what recommendations that can be put to the state, but right now we are working at the mercy of the state. If you have anything good that impresses them, they will allow you to operate. But if you are against any right that is maybe targeting a certain right, then you would be, that space would not be there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Any other comment? Okay, so I'll shoot back to the panel, and I saw Bernard nodding and taking down notes. Eh? I don't know if you'll send back our message to the ministry and to the powers that be.
Thank you so much. I hope I'm not being put, at least Comrade Deo is here. So don't put me in the docket as the state. One interesting thing, and we have appeared before with the Afande Deo before UN panels, UPR, defending it with the letter. UN conventions, mention all of them, because even then, I'm in such either unlucky position that most of the UN state party reports, almost 80% fall within the sector, social development sector. Whether it comes to the CRC, Convention on the Rights of Children, Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, rights on the women, Convention on, against racial discrimination, all these, they fall within our sector. And that also, in addition, there are also ILO conventions. And there are many, and we report on these regularly. ILO is even annual. And so, one of the things that has always come up is about the shrinking civic space. But you see what happens to the other. I have this, I grew up in a very rich up country with a lot of culture, but also nature would frame you up. Because one, without whatever the latest technology in harvesting honey, it used to be a very meticulous exercise for you to pick honey from the bee. It had to be negotiated. You had to make sure you don't kill the bees, but you needed the honey. You had to use the smoke with the fire without necessarily hurting the honey, but somehow you'd pick the honey and leave the bees to even form up and create more honey. I know I got a hammer on my knee from Council Nicholas because of the analogy I used. But that's a reflection of the truth. Without breaking the barrier of mistrust, without being open to what we are doing and accountable, this is what is, I think the state demands that we should know what you're doing as much as you should know. And the other way has the traffic control. The state, you will come and they cannot tell you exactly what they're doing. Some of the sectors. But I will speak for the sector where I come from. Our sector is very open and accountable. And we have a very good working relationship with the civil society. I don't think anyone has raised an issue with the Minister of Gender having led anything to that effect. Instead, we are an enabling sector. And that I will speak without missing my words. Now, of course, there are some elements in terms of dehumanizing the way even the arrests are carried out, lumping you, throwing you over the pickup and, the truck, and as a woman, there are particular human rights which are specific to women. Women's human rights, which should be the basic tenets to be respected, even when you are carrying out arrest. And the law stipulates on how. But the CEO mentioned some of the things which we leave to be interpreted by the enforcement agencies. And that's one of the issues that we should also probably focus. And I grew up admiring the law society. Everything to that effect would amount to a statement. What happened to the statements? On weekly, we had statements from the law society, and it is highly acceptable. Statements from law society. What else are you saying? It is omnipotent, almost. Law society is immune. You can't attack it, you attack the whole legal fraternity. What happened to that strength and power? And we need this to be seen coming back with a lot of force. We want to see these statements. Don't wait for the annual meeting with the HE when you're going to say all your wishes and you suppress all your prayers and you wait for that single opportunity. Just like any other lawyer upcoming lawyer waits for that opportunity when you can have a huge case that can make you break through. Don't wait for the HE to say all your prayers. And the prayer would be, we need a home. Okay. Civil society. And Mary said that there's no space. I don't think there's no space. Unless if you have gone underground. And even underground movements have spaces. I want to say that we have the digital economy. The digital space is unlimited. It is, you can't put a lid on it. Look at, when the priest reaches the height, the apex of their prayer, for me as a Catholic, you say low and bend. You know what is happening to some of the social media pages, spaces. Facebook is regulated. But I'm sure some of you are now on it. Aren't you communicating? Aren't you mobilizing? Including the police. I'm saying this because there is where you've got to be creative and innovative to avoid some of the obvious challenges that are presented by the formal contemporary way a society is managed. And to me, I want to harness the power of the digital economy, and we need to open up. Even lawyers You know, the laws, the way they regulate you not to advertise, not to go public. But I've seen opinions coming from law chambers, and they drive, they shape, and they circulate on the social media. They give you traction. I want to see law society coming out more often, using some of these spaces. I've thrown the arrow back to it's a boomerang. So, but thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Parting shots?
One is that as the ministry and in my own way, because apparently my department advises and leads technical issues to do with the state party reporting, to do issues with the human rights, policy and regulatory part of it. Of course, we have entities like the Human Rights Commission which enforce. But my view is that the law society needs to come up, engage us more, because we are open. We are already converts. They are converts. Just get us and become bishops and give us some title. You become a bishop, you're already a convert. You have been serving for so long without recognition. They are converts in government agencies. If you wait for the mainstream, the whole government to come for you, it will take another year before you get a queen. So many decades before you get another queen. May her soul rest in eternal peace. But it will take other years for you to change policy if you are going to wait for the whole, identify individuals in particular, key particular sectors, the way you have done with the Afande, Deo, and get the entry into the entire framework. And that will change the policy framework and the way some of the practices or some of the issues are handled. I want to say that even the police has its own entry points. You engage them, train the officers, influence, present. Law society should be part of the training team for the police. Down in, where are they? In Ka? No, they're training from where? Cavalier. And Cavalier used to be the Minister of Gender, Labor and Social Development land. We leased out to them a lot of acreage. And so you can see, please engage and appear where it matters. Because some of these police officers actually, it's up from their curriculum. What is there? Have we looked at how they are trained? So that we can change some of these things. So, and then I want to say that we thank God that the Law Society has that public sector buy-in. It is one society that is above the ordinary. It's not even recognized. It's not even an NGO, of course. It's an institution. So use that leverage to influence. The judiciary here has been mentioned for being biased. We should have had someone from the judiciary here to give us the inroads, probably what are they doing to guide. You've known that some of the judicial officers are being also, impacted in their own way, internal issues. So we need this space to be expanded, and we thank you for this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bernard, for your comments and parting shots. Let's hear from Michael. You'll give us your comments and parting shots.
Okay. Thank you, Gabriel. And I want to thank everyone who has participated, colleagues online. You see, the thing about life is that at least you have some space to speak, to cry, and ululate. It's fine. I've been asking about the issue of demand of arrest, and I think we need to take it up. Some of us have started taking it up, but I think we need to do collectively. Because you see, you are innocent until courts declare otherwise. So, because tomorrow it could be me, and tomorrow it is you who is actually arresting me that way. So, there are things which we can't take for granted. The man of arrest, we need to challenge it. And we already started doing some work on that because we need to challenge. The other question I have is, we are speaking about the space. And to me, the work I've been doing on civic space, the digital space, do we have the digital space? Now with the Computer Misuse Amendment, because it's one thing to say the internet is there, but are you able to express yourself? The physical space, where in this country can you go and demonstrate, even as an individual? We have seen one woman demonstration, and she has even lost a womb. It's bad. So where? the other day, the president of this country said you can go to Kololo, but you can't go to Kololo unless you're either invited or you're going to Nira. And maybe the day you want to go to Nira, they have closed it because there is an event. So, Makerere University, you can't demonstrate for fees must fall, even in Freedom Square. So where's the freedom in Freedom Square? There is no physical space. If you want, I have a colleague who was just talking about water, carry these jerry cans to the national water. It was a big issue. You can't even demonstrate against power blackouts by going to memo offices. So if there is no physical space, the last one is the intellectual space. What happened to our professors? What happened to the writing? What happened to the expression? Probably they will not, because their contract won't be renewed. So the intellectual space, the digital space, the physical space, I don't see them from where I stand and sit. So I think that once that is not sorted, we'll still have problems where people will eventually break out like water, and it will not be good. Because for me, I think that, and I agree with Kanodeo, that enabling the environment, enabling the space, will actually in turn breed security. Investors will not want to come to a country where one person goes to demonstrate and a whole battalion is released on them, because then they will not have a good environment to invest in. So once you promote rule of law, governance, let people, I was telling Arthur that, can they just give us one model where just one person demonstrates and nothing happens to them, police escorts them back home? We shall be a very, we just yearn to see that. That just one day in a country, because you are one person, but they're asking you, have you asked for permission? The public meeting. I am an individual. So look forward to seeing many things, by the way, including what happened on Tuesday in some other country. So many things happen. And we look forward to seeing good things, and that we are here, we are not actually, enemies of ourselves. So the moment you have people running away, then there's a problem. Lastly, for me, and just like St. Paul said, that, the greatest of all is what? Is love. I want to say that the greatest of all for me is rule of law and governance. Once we have that, then we shall have love in this country. They will let you, do your peaceful demonstration and even protect you, because we only have one Uganda, and I don't think that I am ready to move to another country called Uganda. It has to be this one, and it has to work for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Let's hear from Arthur.
Thank you so much, sir, about that. In the march up to the 2021 general elections, the Uganda Communications Commission issued a circular that mandated all online content developers and broadcasters to secure a license before they could be allowed to do whatever they were doing. One Ivan Bowe ran to court to challenge that circular. A decision was supposed to have been delivered by court in March 2021. To date, that decision is still pending, even after engaging all the administrative mechanisms that are in place, including evoking the powers of the principal judge to rein in on this other judge that had promised to give a decision in March 2021. Like Bernard, in my past practice, I was a dramatist, so I used to write script for plays. And we have this script that we have cast in stone in Uganda. It begins with the CSO attempting or deciding to hold government accountable. The next scene will be state functionaries, including the regulator, security, and police swinging into action to come and hold the CSO accountable on matters of compliance. The third scene will be the CSO being sanctioned by the regulator, who is a 3-in-1: investigator, prosecutor, adjudicator. The CSO cries foul. And now the other state that appeared in scene 2 mutates into government now in scene 4 and becomes government and says, but there are mechanisms and fora for you to address that. Go to court. And in scene 5, the CSO will go to court. End of story. In this study that Law Society is carrying out and is involved in, you have documented violations of CSOs. And it is not for the sake of simply documenting. I know after documentation and violations being found, then the next thing should be redress. Where are we going to get that redress? I still say, and I will also speak like government, they are courts of law. So we are challenging Law Society to pick these systematic violations out of this study and take them to the courts of law. However, the script should not stop at taking these matters to the courts of law. We need to move a step further and be more creative and start holding our courts accountable. Each time a member of the bar decides to hold the courts accountable, then we are told issues of decorum, issues of professional conduct, matters of judicial independence. My reading of Article 21 of the Constitution talks of all persons, individual, legal, natural, to respect, protect, fulfill the rights of Ugandans. If the Constitution has allowed for courts as an avenue to access justice, and the courts are delaying justice on matters of human rights, why wouldn't we have a petition challenging the constitutionality of the delayed actions of the Constitutional Court on some matters? And take it to the Constitutional Court for them to decide on the constitutionality of their inaction or their delay. Take an application to the High Court on enforcement of rights. You have delayed to deliver a decision in this matter, and let us set the bench against the bench and then test the waters. So I'm challenging the ULS, post this report. Can we see these actions? And yes, we shall have a report, but in a place where the only avenue we have for redress of violations is not giving us that justice, then we need to start challenging them in their own space on their failure of a statutory mandate. Thank you.
Okay. Technology. Thank you, Arthur, and your panelists. Let's give the panel a round of applause. It's not easy to sit on this table for 1 hour. Yes, the last
just one. Sorry about this. I had noted this here. Following the torture of the alleged killers of Andrew Felix Kawes, those victims of torture went to court, and court found that they had been tortured and graciously awarded them 80 million shillings each for torture, but said nothing about the legality of the rest of the prosecution and the matter. So I wrote an article, Judiciary is Presiding Over Torture in Uganda. And I sent it to some of our media houses to have it published. I was advised we cannot publish it. Judiciary is only presiding over justice. Food for thought.
Thank you, Arthur, Michael, and Bernard. Thank you. You may now take your seats. And Bob, thank you for... All right. I've been advised to turn. Sorry. Thank you, Bob, for moderating this session. Yeah, so we've come to the end of yes, Canodale. Excuse me, can we have a microphone?
Thank you again, moderator. Some issues came up during the last part of the moderation, and I want to assure Ugandans that right now I'm supposed to be in Katugo, where we have the School of Military Intelligence, and we are harnessing, we are open. Somebody suggested that we should train together. Fighting for human rights and protection of human rights is not an individual act. It requires concerted effort. So as UPDF, we have opened up and we are harnessing synergy. Right now, we have the Uganda Human Rights Commission. We have OCHA. We all know OCHA. Those offices right now are in Mijera, where we have the School of Military Intelligence. So as remedial action, we have called all intelligence officers from all units within UPDF, Gulu, Moroto, Kasese, Mbarara, everywhere. All of them are undergoing human rights training right now at Mijera. And I have a topic that I'm going to present about the manner of arrest and the rights of suspects, the rights of detainees. The training is going on. 1 month ago, we also had another training under the auspices of Uganda Human Rights Commission and OCHA. And we are training now to different levels. After the intelligence officers, we are going to commanders. It is all about sensitization. Where we have had isolated cases of breaches, this remedial action, we really hope is going to address them. So you can be sure that some of these things may never happen again, and the way they happened, they were isolated. We are better than the way we are portrayed. Thank you.
Kano, thank you so much for the assurance. Indeed, like Bernard said, you're a convert of the cause. Colleagues, we are coming to the end of our agenda today. And thank you so much for sharing and tweeting. We are trending second after the Kenyan election. That is how heated the discussion is on Twitter. And so let's continue the discussion on Twitter. I know most of the recommendations that you have given us here shall be incorporated into the report that will be printed and disseminated to your different institutions. Now let me invite the CEO to give us closing remarks and tell us any other news whether we have it.
Thank you very much, Gabi. I would like to begin by thanking our partners, GIZ, Francesca, and the team. Thank you very much. Please pass on our regards to GIZ and the government of Germany, of the Federal Republic of Germany, as well as I've seen Gonze has left the room, as well as our regards to the European Union. They have been very strategic partners to us who have walked this journey and supported us, access to justice, rule of law, the European Union through various projects, right from refugee access to support under the DGF and the work that we do under the UN Women. So we would like to thank our development partners, the EU, the government of Germany, GIZ, for constantly supporting this cause. We are all in for the same, for the same cause, and I would also like to thank government. Well, I know there are some concerns but at least increasingly there is goodwill from government to sit at the table. Previously, government was hesitant to sit at the table, but I see increasingly that there is goodwill from government to sit at the table, which is a start. So I would like to thank representatives from government, Bernard, Canodeo from the security forces. The UPD has been very receptive. We hope to have more reception from the police and other security agencies that we enjoy a good working relationship with. I would also like to thank our partners in civil society, the institutions that have been able to come and be part of this. Thank you. Let's work together to make this country and this space more friendly. I would also like to thank the membership of the Uganda Law Society, the advocates, for being part. As the legal profession, we are vanguards of the rule of law. So let's gear up. Let's for this cause, because someone said without the rule of law, our president said without the rule of law, then we basically will be phased out of work. You can't have the rule of law without the respect of the law. I would also like to thank all our other partners, the secretariat here, led by our deputy CEO, the rule of law department. I can see some managers here and members of the secretariat. Thank you for putting this together. I would also like to thank our service providers, the hotel, DM events, the media, the Fourth Estate for continuously adhering to our call and giving us spaces. The Fourth Estate is a very unique partner whom we need to harness synergies with, and thank you for constantly having an engagement with us. We also have colleagues from our institutions of learning. The Rule of Law Department of the Law Society has a partnership with institutions of learning. We believe that if we inculcate the culture of the rule of law throughout the stages, this has been tested in other jurisdictions, that if we inculcate this culture right from university, institutions of learning, so that us as Ugandans have the respect for the law, then we shall increasingly, as Canodeo has said, have less lawlessness. If we respect our laws and the Constitution, then we hope we shall have a better country. So I also like to thank our partners in the institutions of learning, universities, Law Development Center, the schools, academia, that have always supported this cause. And any other stakeholders that not mentioned here, but we take your presence here, consider your presence here highly. On behalf of the Executive Council, Management and Secretariat, I would like to thank you once again for making this possible and for giving us the time and the honor of being part of this event. The discussion is continuing, and we hope to have further engagements. We have lunch at the poolside, and okay, we shall have lunch at the poolside, and let me ask Gabi to tell us what will happen on Saturday.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. On Saturday, we are taking the debate that we've just had, the discussion on the freedom of association in this country, to the universities, and we have a national debate that will attract a number of universities, and later on we shall have a plenary session. So feel free to join us at the lower auditorium at Makerere University on Saturday from 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. So see you all there.
Okay. Finally, I'd forgotten to thank my colleague Bob Mayons and the team, the country director of Pilgrim Center for Reconciliation. Bob, thank you for constantly working with the Uganda Law Society towards a better Uganda. I also want to thank our representatives from the NGO Bureau, Ah, okay. We shall pass on our regards. I think the representative has left. But thank you very much, and we wish you a blessed day. Thank you.